This has been kind of the national look, and now we're gonna talk about the local level, what we went through in Harris County. And I'm gonna echo some of the sentiments that were put in place up here as partnerships are incredibly important. Especially that partnership with the National Weather Service, with the River Forecast Centers, and in our case with the WPC, when they were sending us those really colorful maps with huge totals, and you kind of sit there and wonder, is that really going to happen? And in this case, it did. So in Harris County, we have 22 watersheds, and we're just inland from the Gulf of Mexico by about 40 miles or so. All of our water drains to Galveston Bay. It all drains by gravity. We have no pump systems. We're not like New Orleans. We're not below sea level. When we get heavy rainfall, the water drains from west to east. So when we have storms move in from the west, as they commonly do, the water moves downstream, and typically the weather moves downstream with it. In this particular instance, with Hurricane Harvey, we had something like that, as similar floods we had in 15 and 16. We also have 2 flood control reservoirs in Harris County. The Army Corps of Engineers operates and maintains these reservoirs. They were built in the 1940s, just before World War II. And for 70 years, they did their job of protecting Buffalo Bayou and the downtown area from disastrous flooding. Unfortunately, Harvey was the storm that came through and exceeded the design of these reservoirs. And they have 2 spillway designs. There's a spillway design on the north end. There's a spillway design on the south end. So there's 4 spillways total. And Hurricane Harvey, we did engage the north end spillway of Addicks Reservoir. And what happens is the water just spills out around the natural ground. And so you have uncontrolled flow. And as we get further along, I'll talk a little bit about the communication and some of those words like uncontrolled flow and spillways that a lot of people don't know what that is. So the top graph here is our gauge network. We have 154 real-time gauges in Harris County, and these are the durations and maximum rainfalls that they recorded. Really in Harris County, our damaging flooding comes from intense short-duration rainfall. So those 1, 3, 6-hour rainfall rates. Anytime you start having a 1-hour rainfall rate of approaching 7 inches, that greatly exceeds our design. Our design standard for underground drainage is about 2 inches an hour. That's what we can handle. So we were exceeding that with Hurricane Harvey. And then the difference with Harvey versus other storms we've had, for example, Tropical Storm Allison, is that it kept going. 48, 72 hours, and we got these really big totals over a very large area. Flood frequencies, we've heard a lot about this. They're, from a public standpoint, it's horribly misunderstood about what a flood frequency is or a rainfall frequency. But for Harvey, we put this together to capture the gravity of the situation we faced. And there is not any part of Harris County that did not experience, for a storm total event, 4-day total, a 2,000-year rainfall event. And in the southeast part of that county, that dark purple area, that equates to about a 20,000-year rainfall event. The 47.4 down at Clear Creek equates to about a 50,000 year. Now you're taking 150 years of record, you're extending that line out 50,000 years. So how accurate that is, I don't know. But this was an extraordinary event that we never faced before. The previous storm was Allison. That was our benchmark storm back in 2001. And you can see here the comparison in Harvey's rainfall and Allison's rainfall. Interestingly enough, Allison still did produce higher rainfall in a certain period of time. But where Harvey bested Allison was in those long-term totals, where it just kept adding up time and time. And of those 22 watersheds, we had 13 reach record flood levels. And when you talk about hydrology, a lot of times you talk about beating a record by 1/10 of a foot or 1/2 a foot. We shattered records by feet. In some cases, 5, 6, 7 feet records were beat on these watersheds. So it was flooding that had never been experienced before, at least in modern times. I'll talk a little bit now about the communication, because how do you communicate a record unprecedented event? The rainfall totals and the forecast for this event were excellent from the National Weather Service, from WPC, from the National Hurricane Center. They were some of the best forecasts I've ever seen. And we had a good idea that we were going to have flooding. You can't have this much rain and not have some flooding. But when you talk to people after the storm and you ask them, were you prepared? Did you understand? The general feeling is, I understood it was going to rain a lot. I just didn't understand it was going to be that bad. And if you look at this and you start saying, what is 3 and 4 feet of rain going to do, and you've never been through it before, it's very difficult to try to explain what it is and what that means and what is going to happen. And so we started hearing some language during the event that we just don't know. We do not have all the answers. We don't know how high the water is going to get in this area. NWS Chat is an incredible tool. It is something we use a lot in Houston, Galveston with our Weather Service office, with our local TV meteorologist, to ground us all in a coordinated message at the same time. We learned that during Hurricane Rita. If we are not all saying the same thing at the same time, the public is going to be confused what we want them to do. And so NWS Chat is a great place to ground us all at the same time in what we're saying and going out. News conferences, very important. Your local elected officials, your county judge, your city mayor, they have to be out there. They may not like it, they may not want to do it, but they need to do it and they need to be out there. And you should be the one advising them what it is they need to say. Okay? And so this was one of our, this was Sunday morning, about 9 o'clock in the morning, after we had been through the Saturday night and into Sunday morning event. It was continuing to go, and this was probably the most dire news conference that we held, when we had to announce that there were no more government resources available to rescue people. And we had thousands and thousands of people needing rescue. And so the county judge was out there, very visible during this event, and so was the mayor of Houston. Actions, briefings are incredibly important. You have to brief. Make your briefings a point, get to the point, move them along. Most of us who work in this business know we're going to be inundated with conference calls and briefings. And between all of that, you actually have to get stuff done. And so keep the briefings to when you need them. Hopefully you can have them at a scheduled time every day. We actually worked with our National Weather Service office. They came up with a special hydro briefing every day at 5 o'clock. In addition to their web briefings that they were already doing, their 4-day web briefings. The other thing we had to do was on-the-fly inundation mapping. Nobody understands what 54 feet at that gauge means. Very few people do. If you put it on a map, they have some better understanding. This is the area that's going to be inundated. Inundation mapping is very critical. Partners, we've heard a lot about partners and how critical they are. Different means of communication with different partners. NWS Chat for one, we had Twitter for other partners that we were actually communicating direct message on Twitter. We still use pen and paper. That's me writing a message to Fort Bend County and snapping a picture on my phone and texting it to them, because that was just the quickest way we could get it done. Media, this is a big one. It used to be when I started 10 years ago, 15 years ago, my predecessors would say the media stays outside and you kind of keep them at arm's length. You talk to them once or twice a day. That is not the way it works in 2018. The media works with us alongside of us. They work with us in the TransStar. They don't get to come into the Emergency Operations Center, but they are with us in the bottom of that building. When we need to talk, we go down there and talk to them. When we hold a news conference, they're there. And it's a two-way street. The media needs information, and you need to get information out. And so it's extremely important to engage the media. And they're very helpful. They help so many times in Harvey. We also set up 3-day news conferences. That's not typical of a flooding event for us, but given the gravity of the situation we were facing with the Corps of Engineers and what was going on with the reservoirs and releases, we felt that 3 news conferences a day is what we needed to do. And lastly, you've heard it, social media is critical. It's a great place to engage not only the media, but also the public. It can be overwhelming. There's a lot that goes into social media, but it's very effective, and you have to get your point across in a very short amount of words, and you can attach pictures to it. And sometimes pictures, I think we heard earlier about pictures and graphics, they're very powerful messages sometimes. And so social media is certainly one of those things that is extremely important when it comes to disasters. Thank you. Thanks, Joe.